Greetings all, Dr. Woodley here, Dr. X, and this week I'll be giving you a brief lecture on a couple of key points from chapter number 5, Interaction, Groups, and Organizations, Connections that Work. So first of all, let's start off by talking a little bit about networks and connections. One of the key concepts you'll learn about this week is social networks. Social networks are sets of relationships between individuals, groups, and or organizations. So those networks can take many forms. They can be your friends, they can be family, they can be sports teams that you may be on, religious organizations that you may belong to. They can be political parties, subcultures, and then even expand out to whole nations or global entities. Today, the internet has played a significant role in the ways in which we connect together, the ways in which we socially network. So, social network sites like Facebook and Twitter provide people with connections not only locally, but also globally. So, what do networks do? Networks connect us to society and they place us within a larger social structures or social context. Networks create opportunities for members, but they also generate obligations that limit members' freedom. So people who are part of networks, they get a sense of belonging by being in those networks. But there's also these obligations about behavior, for example, or even communication that limit the freedom of group members. So individuals access the networks differently, and their access differs by gender and other characteristics like race and class. Differences in access to opportunity are enhanced by the networks. For one reason, that's why they persist so much. It also explains why there's a persistence in inequality in the society. So, what are the elements of social interaction that you'll learn about this week? First of all, people assume that others will share their interpretations of a situation. So, the sense of shared interpretation includes things that we call situational norms. These situational norms create cues for what's appropriate in behavior. So as you see in the picture here of norms, the social norms or the situational norms around norms behavior is a button-down shirt, a name tag, glasses. These are all seen as appropriate dress for the situation. Situational norms include appropriateness in dress, appropriateness in manners and mannerisms, actions, and even communication, both verbal communication and nonverbal communication. So interaction norms and interpretations are learned through socialization. Interaction that's both verbal and nonverbal. I'll talk a minute here about nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication can take a number of different forms. Nonverbal communication is interactions using facial expressions, your head, your eye contact, body posture, touching, gestures, status symbols, and even something like personal space. So nonverbal communication has a couple of different elements. One, it's culturally specific. Two, it's learned through socialization. And three, it happens in all cultures. So let's talk about an example of that, which is personal space. Personal space is the amount of space a person needs, and that for their own personal well-being. So this is different, and it varies based on your cultural setting. There are gender differences in what's seen as personal space. As I mentioned before, status can dictate how much personal space, control you have over your personal space. There's also social context of personal space. So personal space communicates social position. There's a difference in genders. There's a difference in people in higher positions have greater control over their own physical space. So the last concept I'll quickly touch on from this week's readings in chapter 5 is this notion of groups. A group then is defined as two or more people who interact with each other because of shared interests, goals, experiences, and needs. So group members have a sense of belonging to the group. Usually membership is well defined and there are rules for the members' behavior, rules that the members have to follow. Now, not all collections of people are groups. That's why you have to be specific about membership and the sense of belonging to that group. Groups form through a series of different steps. One is the initial interaction. The second is an emergence of the collective goal. And finally, there are attempts to expand that collective goal that can grow a group. The types of groups you'll read about this week are the primary group. Primary groups are those close personal relationships. There's a strong sense of belonging, strong influence over behavior. The membership is small, and it has intrinsic value. It has people where people feel like belonging is part of the goal. Another type of group you'll hear about are secondary groups, or you'll read about are secondary groups. They're more formal, more business-like. They exist to accomplish a task or a goal. These memberships are usually larger. They may be short or long-term. Other groups mentioned are reference groups, but I'll just quickly talk about and point out the difference between in-groups and out-groups. For an in-group, the members of that group feel a sense of loyalty and belonging to the group. And they often create these in-groups from some reference or from a primary group that they started with. Now, when people belong to an in-group, we all belong to different kinds of in-groups. Each of us is in our own in-group one way or another, either based on our gender or based on our race, based on our primary family, based on our religion. So an in-group is a place where you have a sense of loyalty, a group to which you belong, where you have a sense of loyalty and belonging. Anyone that's outside of that group becomes an out-group. So an out-group is a group that exists in competition with or in opposition to your in-group. Okay, so why it's important for you to understand that distinction is because a lot of the inequities we see happening in the world are because of conflicts between in and out groups, where one group has power over another group and is able to control their situation and the situation of others as well. So those are the key concepts that I wanted to point out from chapter 5 for you this week. As usual, if you have questions, post them in the Ask Dr. X box, or should I say the Dr. X discussion board. X box is on my mind. And I will respond as quickly as possible. Thanks so much and have a terrific day.